What's going on, Bills Mafia? I'm Fernando Schmude, that's your leading the charge. And today I'm going to talk about yesterday's scrimmage, right? The Bills had the scrimmage, the return of red and blue at the Highmark Stadium last afternoon. And today I'm going to talk about it. I will have Anthony Prohaska joining me shortly from Cover One. He was there at the stadium watching the scrimmage and has a lot of um, things to talk to us about what happened in the scrimmage yesterday and the guys that took advantage of it, the guys that couldn't take advantage of it. So Anthony from Cover One is joining us soon, and it seems it was a pretty busy day. It seems we had a lot of action in the stadium yesterday, and that started with Josh Allen showing up with what started to become a trend, right, from 2 years ago when he appeared with the red helmet for the first time, and then a blue helmet last season, and now a black helmet this year. I don't know about you. Please let me know in the chat what did you think about it. What do you think about those Bills helmets? Um, but I really didn't like this black one, just like I didn't like the blue one, and call me a boring old man. But look, I grew up watching the Bills wearing red helmets, and that's what I would love to see them back on. The white helmets are pretty nice as well, and so I'd love to have the red helmets back. But let me know what did you think about this new look Josh Allen shared with us last afternoon, or the other one from the blue one, and what do you think about it? Let me know in the comment sections. Let me know in the chat if you are live with me today. In 1 week after a week out on vacation, I'm back with the leading the charge on every podcast platform as well, right? It's not just live on Rumblings Network, YouTube. That's setting up by being set up by Sarah Larson again, but also on your favorite podcast platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Megaphone. We are available Amazon Podcasts. Please subscribe, rate our content there, download, play. It all helps the show to grow and to support my work here at Rumblings Network. The guys are coming in the chat. Rafa is there. Go Bills. Go Bills to Marcel as well. He doesn't care about the helmet. He wants a Super Bowl. Okay. As long as they win the Super Bowl, they can play even with no helmets, right, Marcel? I'm with you on that, my friend. But speaking of um, speaking of this fashion stuff, right? I'm up for the red helmets back. I don't know about you. I'd love to see that 90s look back with the team. I'd prefer it full time, but um, as long as we have it as an alternate, it would be nice for sure. So Anthony will join shortly, but let me share some of the news from the scrimmage um, from yesterday, right? And it seems it was a practice where the offense struggled a little bit, had some trouble to get the advantage against the defense side of the ball. Unlike it's been the trend all these training camps, the offense has been playing so well and being able to keep the defense on their toes, right? Not knowing how this offense would attack them with all the different formations, the condensed sets that I already explained for Bills Mafia in one of the Portuguese videos, right? And Anthony will be here, and he already talked a lot about it in the Cover One videos. About how does it work. Him and Eric Turner from Cover One as well. Shout out to Eric. They have done a great job showcasing how Joe Brady wanna attack those opponent defense, right? And but in the last practice, the offense couldn't take the best of this defense. There have been some struggles. There have been some interceptions, some batted passes, and and the defense. It seemed like the defense had the advantage in yesterday's scrimmage. Also, we saw some good signs from Ray Davis, the rookie running back, had his moments as well. Um, and on the defensive side of the ball, it seems Kyrie Elam is really taking advantage, making the most of this offseason so far, being able to put himself in the conversation, even for some starting reps, right? But uh, let me bring on to the show Anthony Prohaska. He was there in the stadium yesterday, and everything that I'm telling you right now, Anthony was watching firsthand and can speaks about even better than me. So let me bring him to the show. Anthony, welcome, my brother. Thank you so much for joining the Lead in the Chart today.
No, thank you for having me. Sorry for being late. I had some chaos happen at like 3 minutes before we were supposed to go live. So I subdued the chaos and here we are. But no, thank you for having me. It was fun yesterday at the scrimmage. It's always nice to see. I think you get training camp and then you get the scrimmage, and then the next week is going to be that first preseason game. And it's just nice to start having football kind of back in line with everything. So I'm excited to see that. And yeah, just hearing what you were talking about, you hit on a lot of I think the talking points that fans seem to be gravitating towards, but I also think were kind of major takeaways from last night. And it was a good time. So yeah, I'm pumped to talk about it, and thank you for having me.
Awesome, man. Always awesome to have you on the show, and always awesome to talk some ball with you. And yeah, I was just sharing some of the news that we were able to gather from the scrimmage, right? But obviously having you there as our eyes for that, it's even better, my friend. And it's becoming an yearly trend,
Yeah,
just like
I was
Josh
thinking of
Allen
that.
appearing with the new helmets. A yearly trend, having Anthony Prohaska in the scrimmage and then talking scrimmage with us. And
I was thinking of that today. I was like, I think the second, or might even be the third. I was like, third year in a row we've done it. Yeah, like I was like, this is basically a tradition at this point now. I just expect it. Yeah.
Yeah, you're practically you are the Brazilian representative in the Highmark Stadium, right? Bills Mafia Brazil representative in the scrimmage every year, right?
I
So
like
you
that.
are now a little bit Brazilian as well.
I
Bills
like
Mafia
that.
Brazil appreciates that.
I like that. I like that a lot. That's good.
Yeah, man. And I was just pointing out, like, how the Bills offense has been practicing so well all training camp. With having a lot of good news about them the entire training camp, and then it seems yesterday it wasn't the case against this defense. And my first question for you, Anthony, is like, would you say, like, is it fair to say, for example, that we have no padded practices and mini camp at one level, and then the training camp and some padded practices at a new level? Like, okay, Claypool is doing well without the pads, but let's see how things go with pads on. And then even a little bit above the training camp, those scrimmage, would you rank them like higher than other practices in the training camp, or no, it's just a practice in the stadium, and but it's the same kind of practice we see on the training camps, and we shouldn't hold it higher than any other practice? How would you see this?
So in relation to padded practices in general, I do think they matter more. I think they carry a little more weight. I even said it a couple times with my training camp notes, and like the days that I'd been there, people would ask me like, oh, what about this defensive lineman, or what about this offensive lineman? And I was like, I wasn't really watching because they don't have pads on. And so stuff that happens in the trenches is hard to really judge without pads. And you can really even extrapolate that across both sides of the ball in general. Like it is, you do want to see certain things in general, and you'd like to see dudes perform well in shorts and a helmet, but when the pads come on, it changes a little bit. And I also think, to take that further, I do think the scrimmage kind of ratchets things up a little bit, just from the perspective of how many people are there watching. You're in the stadium. It doesn't feel exactly like a game, but the energy is different than it is at training camp. And I think it's just natural. I mean, you played sports like as professionally, like, when you're in front of the fans or you're on your home field, there's just a little change in the atmosphere. There's a little change in the energy. It's the same thing. guys could be playing one-on-one basketball in a driveway and it's just kind of like, whatever. But if like two people from the neighborhood are watching, they try a little harder and do a little more. And so I think last night was ratcheted up a little bit in terms of the intensity, in terms of the focus, and then tying all that back to the offense kind of struggling a bit. I don't want to say surprised, but I saw some like recaps or just high level notes or thoughts from people on Twitter talking about how poorly the offense looked. And I don't think they looked great, but I didn't think they were as bad as it kind of was being broadcasted. I think the biggest thing was some drops and some batted balls and some turnovers, some, honestly, some really good plays by the defense, some mistakes on the offense, even going through 7-on-7. And then once you got into team, but I didn't think the offense looked as bad as it's kind of being portrayed. And I think some of that could be due to, the pads coming on and things changing a little bit. But I think a lot of it is due to the offense looked good to start training camp. I don't want to take that away from them. The defense looked poor. There was miscommunications in coverage, and usually the defense is ahead of the offense when training camp starts. But I think that little bit of work that the offense did in the offseason, getting together in Nashville, the pass catchers and Josh Allen throwing and getting on the same page with stuff, I think that kind of put them ahead of the defense a little bit. And then with the defense having new faces, Milano getting back into stuff for the full time, you got a new tandem at safety. There's a bit of a, not learning curve, but I think a bit of kind of everything having to morph a little bit and fit together. And on top of that, Babbage calling the calls for the first time. Maybe he's got different calls and adjustments and scheme and structure. So I think the defense was a little bit behind the 8 ball when it started. I think they've gotten better each day of training camp. And so I think last night was also a little bit of the defense continuing to get better. Not necessarily that the offense is bad, but the defense starting to round into form a little bit and then combining with everything.
Yeah, what's good news for the Bills, right? After all, we've had some good defenses, especially or mainly during regular season, and we will definitely need it again this year so we can have a good season and secure a spot in the playoffs, win the division again, and then hopefully carry it to the playoffs with better luck, with healthy stuff and things like that. But even talking about the defense playing so well yesterday, and they didn't have Von Miller and Matt Milano practicing, right? Two big pieces for this defense. We know Milano is coming back from injury, but he's been practicing, as with the ones and doing everything. So the expectation is high. We all want to see Bernard and Milano playing together more and more, right? And then with Vaughn, seeing him healthy, finally just worrying about practicing, just worrying about being prepared for football and not worrying about his knees, right? So having him in this defense will be huge as well if he can produce near the level, at least, that he produced already for the Bills. We're not even talking about Hall of Fame Von Miller from the Broncos, right?
Yeah.
We just need the Von Miller that we saw in a Bills uniform or close to that in key passing down, stuff like that. To see this defense playing better without those two pieces, it's some good signs, right? And
absolutely. And especially knowing, granted, it's just camp, but like Von Miller's looked good. Like he's had juice, he's had bend, he's had athleticism. He doesn't look like he's recovering from an injury. Milano, I thought, has looked good overall, but you are seeing some times from him in drills and in team where I don't want to say that he's laboring, but you can tell he's kind of either favoring that leg or he's like working to try and get it back.
He still thinks about the leg. The thing that I said about Vaughn, like Vaughn is past this time. Like Milano is
correct
dealing with this right now, right? He can do everything, but he's still fighting with I gotta get through that. I gotta forget my leg. I gotta trust it, right? And he's still fighting there.
And for as easy of a, I shouldn't say easy, but with a bone break, it's usually more straightforward than like if you tear a ligament, right? So it's like, okay, the bone just has to heal and you kind of go from there. And I think a lot of people expected Milano to come back. His leg injury was like a severe injury with how he broke his leg and the damage that it did and what it could have done. And so while it was expected for him to be ready to go when camp started, I think from a physical standpoint, he still needs to kind of get back to where he needs to be. But also to your point, from a mental standpoint, and again, you've played sports, Like, like when you have an injury like that, when you first come back, it's in your head a little bit. Even if everyone tells you, if the trainers, the doctors, the coaches are all like, no, you're 100%, everything's good to go, you can do whatever you want, you're in your mind like, am I really good to go? Especially something like lower body, like every time you push off that leg or you move in a certain direction, like consciously or subconsciously, it could be impacting you, let alone the actual physical, I got to get this body part to perform and behave like it did before I hurt it. So you can tell he's working through that a little bit. But yeah, just to see what they did last night, without both of them. And then also seeing the guys who stepped up in their place. Like Dorian Williams was running with the ones without Milano in there. And his eyes are starting to catch up to his physical speed and what he's seeing and how he's reading and reacting and his processing. That was encouraging to see. And then, yeah, more reps for AJ Epinesa, who's looking to take a jump in his game. Dwan Smoot getting some reps with the ones, who I think has had a really good camp, and he had a good night last night. So I think it's nice to see them succeed in the scrimmage without two of their better players and one of their best players in Milano. And it also gives guys the opportunity to shine out a little bit, and you keep kind of building that depth and building that pipeline and going from there. So yeah, it was nice to see them have success as a unit, really from top down. Like the first team, the second team, the third team, guys were making plays, they were swarming, they were flying around the football. Again, I think they got beat a little more than I guess is nationally being broadcasted or covered locally or whatever, but the defense definitely had a good night. And to your point, it was very encouraging to see them doing it without Vaughn and Milano kind of wrecking it.
Awesome. And still talking about some of those guys that you brought attention to, like Dorian Williams. He's been the guy that I've been expecting him to make a jump this year, right? Like not like Bernard, because it's not the same opportunity. Obviously, he has Bernard and Milano ahead of him in the depth chart, and nobody expecting him to take the place of those guys, at least not for now. But so we could rely on him in case, like we already talked about it, like Bernard and Milano, they aren't the biggest linebackers out there, and the way they play, how aggressive they are, they can be banged up here and there, and we'll need some linebackers to play some meaningful snaps when the season comes. At some point during the season, we will, unfortunately, hopefully we can be lucky like the offensive line was last season.
God,
but that's not common. That's not common, right? So at some point, probably we'll miss Bernard or Milano for a game, for a quarter, for some snaps, and we'll need some quality play from the linebackers that will step up. And I feel like Dorian Williams is the guy with the best physical tools to replace those guys and play at a high level. And obviously, Brandon Bean drafted him in the third round for a reason. So with him stepping on the ones, and you already said like his eyes are catching on with his athletic ability, right? So is it fair to expect Dorian to be ready for this role, especially with Nick Morrow, a guy that I felt was like plan B in case Dorian wasn't able to get better, a guy that has experience calling defenses for the Eagles in the past, and obviously already playing in the league. He's injured now, right? So Braylon Spector is a guy with potential but has struggled with injuries in the past as well. And so can we be confident that Dorian will be ready for this role, like being the main guy right after Milano and Bernard?
I think that's the hope. To your point, you'd like your third round guy in year 2 to be ready. And to the other point, he does have all the physical tools, like the length and the athleticism and the speed and the physicality. Like he has so much raw ability that you'd like to see him tap into. And I think whoever steps in for Milano and Terrell Bernard, if it happens, or to your point, when it happens, like it's just, I'd honestly expect like every single starter to be injured at some point and miss a game or miss a half or miss a quarter. Like it's just bound to happen. So you're going to have a drop off from whoever. If Milano steps out, whoever replaces him, you're going to have a drop off. Bernard steps out, whoever replaces him, you're going to have a drop off. You just don't want them to be a hole or a liability or a deficiency out there. And I think from what I've seen thus far with Dorian Williams, like he's made significant strides towards not being that. And I think what's good is not that the other options are amazing, but Deion Jones has flashed a little bit and has looked good at times in camp and had some really nice plays last night in the scrimmage. And he's a vet who knows what he's doing out there. Spector is a developmental guy along with Dorian, but he's got some size and some frame stuff that you can kind of add and play to a little bit. And he's made some plays in preseason games when he's given the opportunity. So I think if Dorian Williams is that third linebacker, I don't think it's necessarily like, well, he won because, who else is going to do it? I think there are other guys who could beat him out. So if we do see him as the next man up, I think that's a vote of confidence from this coaching staff who has no problem sitting anyone, anytime, at any place. So I think that should be kind of a nice little feather in his cap if we do see that. And then just for me personally, yeah, I do think he's trending in the right way towards being that next dude up. And at the very least, I think, getting some time early as the third linebacker on the field when they go heavy, because we've seen that from day one. It's Milano and Bernard, and then when the Bills want to bring another linebacker on the field, it's been Dorian Williams. So I think the confidence that he's built has been a good thing for him. We're not really going to know until the bullets are live, how much can he really go? Because last year, again, he was getting misled all over the field. He just didn't have it mentally yet. Not to say that he won't. I don't want anyone to think like, oh, Dorian Williams is stupid. He can't play football, because that's not the case. It was just such a big adjustment for him. I've been impressed with how he's taken his game this year, and I do feel much more confident in him stepping in for either Milano or Bernard if he were to go in this year versus last year. When he went in, I was very much like one eye open, one eye closed. I was like nervous and kind of scared. This year, I don't feel that way.
That's some great news, and about Schmude as well. It's also great news because obviously we don't have Leonard Floyd anymore, and despite all the great news about Von Miller, ideally we would be able to save him for third downs and late in the games, and so he can really be fresh when the Bills need him in the playoffs or to end the season, win the division again, make the playoffs. So it's not great to have Von Miller playing every first down and dealing with multiple blockers all the time, right? If you can save the vet for special moments to be the closer, like we always like to talk about him, we will need somebody to step up to play those early downs and make all those snaps, early snaps against huge blockers and fill the gaps against the run, play the run. So having Schmude stepping up for that alongside Groot, obviously, and Epineza, it's been good news about Schmude stepping up recently in the training, and we could see a bit of that yesterday as well, right?
Yeah, he's had a good camp. He flashed again last night, and he's been somebody who I expected to make the roster. I expected him to be kind of like that edge 4 type of dude, just with his physical profile, his play style, his size and frame. He matches what Sean McDermott and this team like in a defensive end. They like big, long, physical dudes who compress the pocket. And he also has the added bonus of being able to kick inside to defensive tackle on third downs and stuff should they want to do that. And exactly to your point, it gives them another guy who can eat snaps, so you don't have to use Vaughn when you don't want to use Vaughn, who you can add as a nice little rotational piece along with Groot and AJ Epinesa, as you need to, and you can save Vaughn, or you can bring Vaughn a little slowly, or use him more strategically depending on what you want to do and how the game script is flowing from game to game. And yeah, you just see it. Like, this is a dude who, he was a legitimate player with the Jags before he tore his Achilles, and he tore that Achilles week 16, 2022. Last year was a big recovery year for him overall, just with the Achilles, but then also getting into game shape because it affected his offseason routine. But in that last season for him, where he was really healthy and regular in 2022, amongst 126 qualifying defensive ends, he was tied for 36th in pass rush productivity, tied for 56th in total pressures, tied for 53rd in hurries, and tied for 31st in win percentage. So he was kind of towards the top 30s and in the top 40s for a majority of stuff, and in the top 50 at worst. That's an awesome thing to have as your edge 4. And also when you consider how he was used in Jacksonville, where it's not like he was always that defensive end lining up wide and just rushing the passer. He was used inside to kind of spike and clear things up for other guys on two-man games. He would do the dirty work. He would do the muddy stuff in addition to rushing the passer just in one-on-one situations. So seeing how good his metrics were, knowing that he was put in situations where it wasn't designed for him to get a pressure or designed for him to get to the quarterback, speaks to his game. And again, when you look at the rest of the edge depth chart, Casey Toohill flashed a little bit last night. Kingsley Jonathan flashed. Solomon had a couple nice plays, but I just think with his pedigree and profile and play style, I had Smoot penciled in already as kind of the edge for on this team, and he's very much looked the part in training camp and last night in the scrimmage.
Awesome. Yeah, Marcel want to know about the rookies, and you mentioned Solomon. Solomon is a guy that I'm a big believer in him, and obviously easing the expectations early because that's a late round pick. But this guy is an interesting one, a little bit different profile from the defensive ends that normally the Bills target, right? And a guy that might become a specialist on third downs. So how good has Solomon performed, and even moving to inside defensive line, because it seems Ed Oliver had another good day yesterday, and then we have a rookie there with Carter as well. And one of the guys that I'm curious and I was really anxious to ask you about is Daquan Jones, because I always tell people how surprising it was to have Daquan Jones getting back still last season from a pectoral injury, right? I always remember how J.J. Watt came back from this injury against us in the playoffs, and he was like playing just a few snaps and rotating a lot. And Daquan Jones, no, he came back and played a lot of snaps, right? And it's difficult after a torn pectoral. So how's Daquan Jones looking? Because that's a guy that was playing at an awesome level before the injury, right? Yeah.
I think he looks like similar back to his old self. Like he's anchoring in the middle. He's clogging things up. He's one who I don't really even... I just assume that he's going to be doing his job because he's a really good player and he's a vet and he's got such a good fit in this defense. And so, yeah, I think him getting healthy and getting further away from that pec injury has been good for him. I think he's been solid inside. Ed Oliver, to your point, has been solid inside. And then really, last night, the second team defensive tackle rotation was Austin Johnson and Deshaun Williams. Like Dwayne Carter was running with the threes. Dwayne Carter's kind of, I don't want to say been absent, but I think he had a batted ball last night at some point that may have led to an interception. But he really hasn't flashed too much. Again, for me, I'm really watching once the pads come on. I think the preseason is going to go a long way for him, but he's not somebody that's really stood out each day. And I think seeing Johnson and Williams as the second pairing, when I think a lot of people thought it would be Johnson and Carter, I definitely think is something to note. And Deshaun Williams has flashed a bunch. Penetration, quickness, the ability to kind of get into the backfield and cause some havoc. You saw that a bit last night. You've seen that in camp more than Carter as well. But, and going to Marcel's question, I think, Carter's preseason, I don't think has been great. If we're starting from the top down, Keon Coleman's had a really good camp. Cole Bishop, I think it started to look good as camp went on, and then he got banged up. Man, now this is a challenge for me to remember every single pick in every order. Carter, we already spoke about. Ray Davis. Ray Davis has been really good. I think just what he's done out of the backfield as a pass catcher, not even just underneath, but in the seams, on rail routes up the sideline. He's winning vertically. He wins in the intermediate. He wins underneath on option routes. He's looked good. Cedric Van Pran Granger has mainly been running with the threes. And I do think that the adjustment for him was going to be not tough, but with his size, like everything needs to be on point with him technically and from a leverage perspective. I don't think he's looked bad, but I think he does look like a guy who's adjusting to the NFL. Ulofoshio has shown good speed. Again, it's going to be tough for him to kind of show anything from a linebacker spot. He's not running with the ones or the twos. So you're seeing him on teams, you're seeing him with the threes, but the athleticism is there. Solomon has flashed multiple times in the scrimmage, in camp. You see the athleticism, you see the fluidity, you see the bend, his ability to kind of have that get off on the line and turn the corner on guys. And then you also see the other side of it where sometimes his size limits him, and a bigger dude gets hands on him, and it can be over really quick. And that goes to your outlier point. He does have good arm length and hand size for his size, but he's almost 6'1", and he's about 246 pounds. And the Bills traditionally, their edges that they've drafted in the Brandon Beane era are 6'5", 270 pounds. Like, that's kind of the average of where they lean into, or 6'4", 246 pounds. So he's very much an outlier in that aspect, but his pass rush ability and the athleticism and the juice and the bend, I think, has showed well. Grable was getting some work with the twos, their tackle out of UCF. Throughout camp, I think you've seen the athleticism and the size there play for him. I'm interested to see what he does in the preseason. I haven't noticed Travis Clayton too much. He was their last pick, the International Pathway Program. Daquan Hardy, though, I think is a fun one. He looked good last night at the scrimmage. Plays from the slot, but then also they put him outside, and he was playing outside corner. He had an interception in the low red zone playing outside corner where he was impressed and then bailed and just kept the receiver in his peripherals, carried him upfield. Quarterback threw it a little short, but even if it was a good ball, Hardy would have been in great position to kind of knock it away or get a pass breakup, but it was a poor throw, so Hardy was able to pick it. He's shown good ability, kind of jump routes, good eyes. He offers return ability as well, both in the punt game and the kick return game. So I think he's had a good preseason for him as well. And then just circling back to the last part for Marcel, thinking of any of the rookies will have a big impact on the team.
Yeah.
I think Keon Coleman will. I think Ray Davis will. I think Cole Bishop will once he gets healthy. Those are my three big in terms of the biggest impact. I think it's in that order. I think it'll be Coleman, Davis, and then Cole Bishop. I think you could see Bishop have more of an impact than Davis. I just don't know where he stands with that injury and how long it's going to take and how it impacts him. But I think those are going to be the top three from the class for this year that have an impact on this team.
Hardy maybe as returner.
He could be the returner in the backup nickel. Yep.
Yeah, and that's an interesting one. And just when we mentioned Solomon and even Van Pran, those are guys that probably will take a lot of the advantage of next offseason after 1 year working with the trainers and the training room, the Bills training room, and bulking up a little bit. The Bills, just like they asked the Peneza to slim down, but obviously to become stronger. And they like to sometimes work on those bodies, on those archetypes, right? And those guys probably are a year away of being physically ready to contribute like the Bills envisioned them to do so, right?
Yeah, and that's such a funny thing too, thinking back to Epinesa, where they're like, hey man, lose all this weight, but also get strong and also learn how to play the position more and change the way you play and change this. And also it's COVID, so we can't meet you in person or do any of that kind of stuff. It's such a hard thing to do.
Bro, I always talk to people how crazy it was what Epinesa went through, I know you like Epinesa a lot, and it's not like I don't like him. I like him as well. I just don't see him becoming a defensive, a starter defensive end. I think he's very good at as a rotational guy, but to being able to slim down and be faster, but still you gotta get stronger. And then it's crazy to think about how he had to become an entirely different player, from his college tape when he was kind of heavier, could kick inside. It was a totally different defensive end, right?
And you have to learn how to do that in the NFL. So everything you have to change. He's talked about it each offseason. He had to change his diet. You have to change your workout routine. And that's just to get your body to slim down to what you want to do. But then to your point, you want to lose weight, but you don't want to lose muscle. You still need to maintain strength. Then he also has to change his play style on top of that, because now he has to be more of an athletic hands type of rusher as opposed to a big mauler where he's going through dudes. And again, you're doing this on the fly against the best tackles in the world who you're trying to beat regularly week in and week out. And then, and it's COVID, so you're adjusting to life as an NFL player. You're changing your diet. You're changing your play style. You're in a new city. You're trying to figure out how to be a pro. So many things. And I do kind of agree, though, with your trajectory of him. I'm very interested to see what he does this year, because going back to the Von Miller point, I think this year is set up for AJ Epinesa to be the edge 2 in terms of snaps, in terms of snap share and on the field, along with Rousseau, which will go a long way for him if he can, succeed in that role. But I do see him as more of like an edge 3, edge 2. I think he can become like a legitimate starter, but more of like a low tier edge 2 guy. But some of the flashes there were crazy. Like going back and watching the game against the Eagles and watching him beat Jordan Mailata, who is one of the best offensive linemen in all of football, and the way he beat him, it's so encouraging. And if he can tap into that a little bit more, he really could be something, because his efficiency metrics are great and some of his tape was great. I'm very interested to see what he can be, but I do feel that, his ceiling is more like it's Rousseau and then somebody else, and then AJ Epinesa is that third dude. And there's also value in that with how much defensive lines rotate. You really need, it's not even like a top 4 where you need like, okay, 2 defensive tackles and 2 edges. You really need a top 6. Like you need 6 dudes at least that you can rotate in and out. And look at these teams that have been to the Super Bowl or won the Super Bowls, like what the Niners do with their defensive line, what the Eagles do with their defensive line, even the Chiefs. Like the Chiefs have Chris Jones, but then they have a bunch of guys that they've rotated in and guys who step up and are able to make plays up front. And that's just to name a couple teams. Like you need that top 6. And so Epinesa like definitely has value. It just, I know that sucks for, you have a dude who's a 2nd round pick. You want him to be like, no, this dude's a legit starter, not like, oh yeah, good rotational guy, but there's still value in what he does. And I'm interested to see what he does this year with the opportunity that looks to be before him.
Yeah, man, and I think this year is key for him, because with what he was asked to do, it's tough to expect him to like has all this change in his body and instantaneously like produce, like, okay, I'm ready and I will produce. And I always remember when I was playing for a club here in the northeast of my country, Santa Cruz, and they asked me to slim down a lot. They asked me to slim down a lot. They had a target of fat percentage. They wanted everybody in that range, and I was asked to be in that range, and I never was in that range. It was crazy, like crazy low for me, for my body type. And okay, I'm gonna do that, but it was a crazy hot place as well. And when I was supposedly in shape, man, every game I was praying for other teams to not kick balls on my goal, because I started the warm-ups, and when I went, the game started, I was totally tired, and I couldn't, like, like the 5 first minutes, man, I was totally done. Like, I was like, man, I need to recover now, and then I will be able to perform, And it was difficult to adjust, because it was a short period of time, and changing my body in this short period and to adapt to that. So it's not like because you are ideally in the right shape or on what people say is the best for you, that it's really the best for you, or that you're gonna be able to take advantage of that so quickly, So with AJ, I feel like last season he finally started to feel more comfortable in this new shape, and maybe this year is the year where we can see him taking advantage of all those changes. But it doesn't happen from night to day. They need to be able to get comfortable in this new body and this new shape and to produce. And with AJ, there is the opportunity to still happen, despite being later than what we would like to see so far.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And talking about the safeties, man, because now we start to lose some guys injured. You just talked about Bishop getting hurt when it seemed like he was taking advantage of Edwards being injured and getting some looks in the first team. And now we have Damar Hamlin in the conversation. One guy that I have higher than most people, and I really liked how he played as the safety, and I feel like one Justin Jefferson catch kind of killed his how Bills Mafia sees him. But Ken Lewis has been better than people give him credit for, especially when he plays safety. I feel like it's tough for him to replace a guy like Taron Johnson in the slot, but
Yeah.
When he plays safety, he's played well when he was a starter, or even last year when they dropped Poyer down to linebacker and had Rep and Ken Lewis as the safeties. And he always was in the right place. He always plays fast, plays physical, despite being a small guy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and the new guys arriving. How is this safety room shaking up, and what could you see from the position last night that called your attention?
Oh, I'm worried about the safeties, and the only reason I'm not more worried is because I trust Sean McDermott in getting the most out of him. Like, he's done that forever. He did it in Philly. He did it in Carolina. Like, he's getting great seasons from Kurt Coleman and Trey Boston and a very old and aging Roman Harper. Like, he's just gotten a lot with a little. Even Hyde and Poyer. Like, Hyde signs, and it's like, oh, this punt returner nickel corner is going to be your full-time safety. And then Jordan Poyer is like, okay, this dude who's been hurt and didn't really do much with the Browns is going to be the other safety. And they both become all-pro caliber dudes and kind of are at the forefront of the safety movement league-wide defensively in the NFL. So I trust him to set up guys for success back there and get the most out of that position. I just think that the safety grouping, I think, is a bit limited overall in terms of right now, in terms of their athleticism and kind of the range and the coverages that they're going to be able to work because of that limited athleticism, that limit in range. And, I think Cam Lewis is a guy who I think he gives you a high floor at a multitude of positions as a depth guy. And Bobby Babbitt talked about him as well in when was it? Monday, Tuesday, or midweek when he did one of his post-camp press conferences, just talking about like what he gives you. He can play in the slot. He can play a little outside if you need him to. He can obviously play safety. And yeah, he's only like 180 pounds, mid-80s at most, but he plays physical. He plays violent. I do think, everyone's always going to be like, oh, Cam Lewis. Oh, yeah, when Justin Jefferson mossed him and the Bills lost that game, which also bothers me because, yes, that happened. But I feel like all people also forget that Josh Allen fumbled the snap on the Bills goal line and that the game should have been done like that. The defense got the stop. Allen fumbles the snap, and that allowed the game to continue further. So again, it's on everyone as always. It's no one person loses a game. It takes a team, yada yada, and all that stuff. But Lewis gives you depth at safety and nickel corner. I don't love the idea of Cam Lewis starting at safety, but again, I mean, like, who feels comfortable with their third or fourth string safety starting at safety? Like, nobody feels that way. It's just been disappointing to see the injuries, I think, too. Like, Mike Edwards was banged up throughout the offseason. You could tell he was kind of getting back into everything once camp started, and then he got banged up again. He was really frustrated. I was there the day that it happened. He came over and just sat down, and you could tell he was frustrated. You also could tell that he wasn't really moving great before that. So I don't know if the offseason injuries that he had were continuing, or, he hurt that hammy earlier in practice and was trying to gut through it. But you can tell how frustrated he was. And then, Cole Bishop's a rookie who I think his athleticism really showed. I loved what I saw from him last week, Sunday. He's the most athletic safety in the room. Watching him spin from the post to the box and vice versa, and watching him cover down on routes in the flat or underneath in the low to mid-intermediate, like the speed and athleticism that he has, I think means a lot in that safety room because you don't really have it. Like, Taylor Rapp is more of a thumper than he is like a rangy type of dude. DeMar Hamlin, I think, is fine as a depth guy, and he can start for you. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world if DeMar Hamlin, is one of the starting safeties right now, especially with all these injuries. But his athleticism is limited. His upside, I think, is limited. Edwards, I think, is good at a lot of things, but isn't this overall like athletic marvel. But the way he processes and sees the game allows him to, I think, play above his limitations physically. Not that he's the most physically limited dude, but he's just not some marvel like Bishop is. And it's a really interesting group. I'm interested to see how Edwards heals. Does Edwards even make the team now because of the injury? Do they decide to cut him because they can? How long is Bishop out when Bishop comes back? Does he get worked in? How set are they with DeMar Hamlin and Rapp being the starters? Like it's a group for me that has a lot of questions at it. And it's so frustrating because year after year, it's always been like, oh, Hyde and Poyer. And even though I think Hyde and Poyer both looked a little long in the tooth last year, and I do think the Bills needed some kind of change back there. Yeah, it's a shock to kind of sit there and be like, oh man, what are the safeties going to be? Because it's just been I've never thought twice about it year after year because it's just Hyde and Poyer, and they're awesome and they get the job done. That's it.
Yeah, man. Definitely, definitely. And moving to the other side of the ball, like, um, how fun will be this Joe Brady offense, man?
Mm.
Because he obviously took over last season, but man, in season it's so hard to be able. He obviously had to work with what Dorsey had,
Mhm.
right, and then make his adjustments week to week, and kind of give his input and run more stuff that he likes. But now it's an entire off season, and he's being able to kind of put his true identity to this playbook, right? And you've talked a lot alongside Eric about those condensed sets and how the Bills want to attack the other teams with those condensed sets. I already explained it to Brazilian Bills Mafia in a video in Portuguese what the advantage and some disadvantage of using those sets. But it seems for this group, the Bills built with so many interchangeable pieces, and Joe Brady always talking about positionless offense, right? And so, watching not just the scrimmage last night, but you've been there watching camp. How fun will be this offense, and what can we
Oh.
expect for this new offense with all those guys looking to eat there?
It's been a nice adjustment from Brady in this offense, and part of me also says that because I've been talking to your point. I've been talking about what direction I thought the offense would go in
Mhm.
all off season.
Yeah.
I've done so many episodes about condensed formations and reduced formational width and what that means, and I've broken down film of the teams who do it well and why it matters and what it means and all this stuff. So to see them leaning into it like makes me so happy and makes me feel so
Yeah.
vindicated. But the way he's pairing it with the uptick in motion and play action and shifts and bootlegs and everything, it really presents for an offense that I think has the opportunity to adjust well to defenses, but also throws so much at a defense that it makes it less likely that you have to adjust because you have so much going on that the defense already has to account for. And I keep using this phrase like Joe Brady pushing every button and pulling every lever that he can.
Mhm.
And I think he has to do that because, again, like Stephon Diggs being gone is a loss. I don't care how anybody wants to shade it or color it. Like it's a loss to not have that guy. But not having that guy, it isn't the end of the world. You can mitigate that loss by dressing things up differently. It's similar to, I use the basketball analogy all the time. If you've got Michael Jordan, you just, okay, everybody clear out. Let Jordan take this guy one on one and we'll be fine. If you don't have
Mhm.
that guy, you got to set a lot of moving picks and screens. You need ball movement. You can manufacture points in other ways. You can win championships in those ways. You just don't have that superstar guy that you lean on like that. And I thought Brady was so integral to the offense being the best version of themselves this year. And you can say that about any offensive coordinator, but I really felt it more with Brady because you have Josh Allen. Like it used to be Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, and then the rest of the offense. Now it's Josh Allen and the rest of the offense.
Mhm.
And the rest of the offense has changes on the offensive line, changes in the wide receiver room, changes at running back. Like you've got these new faces, new players, new body types, new skill sets, all this stuff. So I really felt like it was on Brady to maximize what they had. And I think given the body types and skill sets and frames that they have at wide receiver and tight end, I think he really is going to maximize that. Again, by maximizing all the size and athleticism that he has between the wide receiver room and the tight end room, these condensed formations, all the bootleg stuff, the motion, the shifts, like he's really going to stress the defense based off of what I've seen so far. And yeah, it looked like the offense that I think Bills fans have wanted to see is the offense that they look to be going into this season. And we'll see what happens again once everything is real come regular season time. But he's upticked a lot of everything. I've talked about it at camp. Like every single play has a shift or a motion pre-snap. Like literally almost, I would say 92% of every play that's been run in camp has had a
Mhm.
motion or a shift to it, let alone the play action that comes off of it and how he's making everything look similar. So
Mhm.
it's been nice to see him push those buttons and pull those levers early on because again, I think he has to and he needs to.
Awesome. And how about Edwards and McGovern inside that offensive line? Because we kind of know what we have in Dion Dawkins and even Spencer Brown, despite him trending upwards and obviously can be better than he is already. But and Torrance getting better, but he was already very good as a rookie as well. But now McGovern moving to center and Edwards back in a full-time starter role. Like he played really well as the sixth offensive lineman last season, but now he's back as a starter, right? It's a totally different role for Edwards coming back. And we've heard about the a huge run by Ray Davis last night where the offensive line opened a huge gap. And all I could think about that was like, okay, maybe Edwards and McGovern have something to do with that, because those are guys that a lot of people are worried about, and those are guys that I'm not worried about them, and I'm actually very curious to see McGovern as the center since he wanted so badly to move there, you know. So what could you see about those guys and the first team offensive line in general from last night or the camp?
I thought they got good push last night. I think as practice went on, I think the defense started to win a little bit more. There was better fits against the run. There was better push and penetration. But early on, the Bills starting offensive line was getting really good push, creating really good displacement. There was space for the running backs to move and work. Good time for Josh Allen in the pocket. So they looked good early on. But then again, I think the defense adjusted and kind of swung the pendulum back in their favor. Overall, similar to kind of the conversation with the safeties, I trust in Aaron Kromer as an offensive line coach. So I trust in his vision. And, you know, David Edwards, for being the sixth offensive lineman for the Bills last year, he was the starter. One, he has experience with Aaron Kromer from his time in LA, but he was the starter for the Rams in that Super Bowl season at left guard. So he's not some journeyman lineman or some journeyman like depth guy. Like he's been a legitimate starter on very good teams. And again, speaking with what he did with the Rams. So he's a solid piece. He exhibits all the Kromer teachings with his hand technique and his footwork and his base and what he does. The McGovern one is still interesting to me. And I'm always going to come back to, I don't remember who did the interview with him. Maybe it was Eric Wood, but McGovern said like he anticipated moving to center. Like that was a move that was going to happen. He just didn't know when and how it was going to go down. So he was a little shocked.
Eric Wood. Yeah, yes. He was. Yeah, Eric Wood.
And so he was like, he didn't know Morse was going to go this year. He didn't know if it was going to be this year, but he knew the long-term move was for him at center. And so this better work out because like this was your plan. Like, and I know Mitch Morse, you know, wasn't the biggest guy and he had some issues kind of being driven into the pocket at times, but Mitch Morse is still a really, really good center who allows you to do a lot of really good stuff. I think McGovern's a different player, a little less athletic, but he gives you more of an anchor, more of an ability to kind of secure the depth of the pocket a little bit. And he's got longer arms. But he's still a leverage player like Morse. He's not a people mover. He's not this road grader. He's still a dude that's going to win with positioning and body lean and leverage. He's more of a shielder and a shepherd than he is, let me grab this guy and chuck him and throw him out of the way. But I think overall the offensive line has been fine. And I expect this offensive line to be fine. I don't think they're going to be a line that's, you know, top 5, one of the best in the business. But I think at worst, I think this is like a top 15 type of group. And I expect them to be in like the 12 to 8-ish range. I think this is a line that has athleticism. They've got versatility in the run game. And they're good they're good in pass pro and in the run overall. And again, I think you got veterans up front in that group. Aaron Kromer knows how to coach them up. I'm not really too worried. I am disappointed that it's not the same line as last year because I think last year's line was really good, but I think that things will be okay. And I think things are looking fine right now other than, you know, McGovern just adjusting to center and having some snap issues with Josh Allen, but that happens at camp every year, especially when you're moving to center for the first time in a long time. Like I kind of expect those kinks to happen.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I agree. And how about Josh Allen? Because we've been through an off season of, I don't know if I can say, but I think it's kind of disrespect towards Josh since last season, and it's hard because we know Josh like from interviews and obviously from following from afar, right? It's not like knowing the guy, living with him inside the locker room, but all along the years we've seen some signs of the kind of person Josh is. Like, for example, I always telling the right things to the media. Yeah. But then making the players known inside the field, like, hey, I heard what you said, like with Jalen Ramsey, for example. He always makes Jalen Ramsey pay
Yeah.
every single game. So he acts like, no, I don't care about what that guy says. But when he plays him, he always makes him remind, like, hey, I've heard it. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it makes me think Josh is the kind of person that he can go in this direction that I'm gonna mention now. Like I remember last season after um, he didn't get votes for or got just a few votes for MVP, and he met Taylor Lewan. He wasn't at the NFL gala
Oh yeah.
ceremony. He was elsewhere, and he met Taylor Lewan, and Taylor Lewan, hey, you didn't win the MVP, or you just got some votes, and Josh was like, oh really, and they were like obviously being throwing shade at the NFL and the ceremony, like Lewan was saying something like, "Oh, next time you need to throw the 2 times the same number
Yeah.
of touchdowns or things like that," and Josh was agreeing, and I kind of expect Josh to be petty this year, like to finally act more like, you know what, it's me against them, and
Mm.
they want to disrespect. I'm okay. I'm the just the 12th best player now according the players list. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
not the MVP according people. Okay, I'm overrated now. So I can't beat Patrick Mahomes, or
Yeah.
can't those silly talk. But I expect Josh to really take over this personality of, you know what, I will make them pay now, and kind of embrace the villain role, and okay,
Yeah.
let's be the villain, since okay, nobody, it's not like everybody can be the hero, so let's be a great villain,
Yeah.
to Patrick Mahomes, the superhero, the poster child of the NFL,
Yeah.
so I hope Josh takes this road. I don't know if he will, but everybody's that's been watching practices in the camp are saying he's looking awesome. He's ready to have a great season. I really feel like after all the drama with Stephon Diggs as well, I expect him to want to prove everybody like, okay,
Yes.
it wasn't Stephon Diggs. Okay, I can make everybody play well, just like he already showed with John Brown, Cole Beasley,
Mm.
all other guys that he played in the past. So how good has Josh looked, and not just last night, but the entire training camp, and are we maybe on cusp of finally watching Josh Allen to win the MVP, putting up a season that nobody will be able to take away from him, like we've seen recently in other seasons.
Yeah, he's looked good in camp. I tweeted some stuff last night. Like his eyes are getting to the right place early and often. He's making good decisions. But I think what's really helping him is the condensed formations and the play action and the bootlegs and the run game and all of this stuff. It makes life easier for the quarterback at times if it's run in the right way. It's why, Kyle Shanahan's offense, he seemingly, like, he went to the Super Bowl with Brock Purdy and with Jimmy Garoppolo, guys that aren't the most talented quarterback, but he has this system where it's seemingly like, nope, I can just pluck any quarterback in and we're going to do great, which is why when they took Trey Lance, it was like, oh my God, look what he's done with non-athletic quarterbacks. And now they got this dude who can move and he has a cannon for an arm. Like, oh my God. And when you add all these layers, and I think these straightforward reads and progression pieces like Brady has done for Allen, I expect to see more. I expect to see an easier offense for Josh Allen. I think Dorsey's offense and even Dable's offense at which it's so funny too. Like the Ken Dorsey hate permeates every conversation for everyone, even to the point of like, I think everybody forgot when Bills Mafia wanted to burn Brian Dable alive because of how bad they looked against the Jags in that game against Jacksonville and how bad the offense was at times. Like even what you had with Dable and Dorsey, a lot of it was still like Josh Allen, like just go be an alien, like go be a mutant, do something amazing. Like the joke I've always said for years is under Dable and even Dorsey, like if you got a copy of the Bills playbook and you opened it, it was just pictures of Josh Allen. Like it wasn't plays. It was just Allen doing different things and cool, awesome stuff. I think this year Brady, and again, I think this is the necessary direction for the offense, given their roster makeup at wide receiver and tight end, but also the direction of NFL offenses to fight what defenses have done the past couple of years. You have to move in this direction that they are with these condensed formations and reduced formational width, motion play action, all this stuff, all these levers being pulled and buttons being pushed. I expect to see more of a in structure success for Josh Allen. So more, he snaps the ball and the ball comes out right away, or he goes from his first read to his second read to his third and he pulls the trigger. Like, because those options are being schemed up for him easier. And again, that's what a lot of this motion is. Like, you send Curtis Samuel in motion across the formation, Allen snaps it. The first thing he's looking to do is, okay, does Samuel have space out wide? Okay, he does. I'm just going to sling it, and Samuel's going to catch it at 1 yard, and he's going to run forward for another 5 or 6, and now it's 2nd and 5, or it's 2nd and 4, and then we're going to run the ball, and it's going to be 3rd and 1, or a new first down, and then we'll go play action. Like, I think there's less on him schematically, because I think Brady is adding more schematic elements to this offense. But to your point, I do think there's a lot on Allen from a pressure standpoint, because anytime he screws up or doesn't do good, everybody's going to come forward and be like, see, it was all Stephon Diggs. Told you guys, Stephon Diggs, made Josh Allen. And especially because I think that Texans offense is going to be so good. Diggs is going to help them be good, but I think they would have been good regardless. But he's going to take them to another level. If the Texans, every time the Texans offense balls out and Allen doesn't, everyone's going to be like, oh, look how, Diggs is doing so much. Even if Diggs only has like one catch for 10 yards in that game, they're going to be like, oh, look, Diggs is opening so much. Allen is not. It adds another layer. And so I think things will be better for him this year schematically in terms of helping him from a progression standpoint and a decision-making standpoint. But I think there's more pressure on him to kind of answer the doubters or the naysayers or the critics. And yeah, everybody feels that. Like, he hears it. Every player hears it. They know. The one that's always going to get me is, my boy, Leo Messi, who is one of like the most humblest dudes ever, like makes nothing about himself. Oh, I forget what year it was. He scores that literal like last minute winner against Madrid at the Bernabeu to make it 3-2 Barca. And he runs over to the stands and he takes his jersey off and he turns it around and he just holds it up, showing the Messi to the crowd. I got goosebumps thinking about it. Because like that, I would never expect that ever. Like, he is the king of score a goal, point to whoever passed him the ball, or just look in the camera and kiss the logo or talk to his kids. He would never do something like that, but like the fans were giving it to him so much, and it was El Clasico, and you knew like the moment. So like he scored and was like, yeah, I'm going to flex on everybody right now. Like, and if he could do that, I was like, anybody could do that at any point. And that's just not like, that to me is always the example of like every player, even the calmest, quietest, humblest ones, they hear everything that is said about them. They know, they read it. And if they're not, it's getting told to them. Like their teammates are telling them, or their friends or family. Like, I'm sure Allen has cousins to be like, yo, bro, you saw you're only 12th on the NFL top 100 list. Oh man. Hey, you saw that, this Twitter account says that you're not going to be anything without Stephon Diggs this year. Like, even if he doesn't see it, it comes to his doorstep. And so, yeah, I expect to see a more motivated Josh Allen, because he's human like everyone else. And I think he does want to prove everyone wrong a little bit. And then I think that'll play into, can Joe Brady keep him within the scheme and allow him to still be the crazy wild horse mutant that he is? It's going to be really fun to see.
Great stuff.
I had to bring up one soccer thing. I'm sorry. But
I was ready. Actually, I have one last question about the scrimmage for you. And I was ready to talk a lot of. I already talked a little bit about my soccer career, but I have another example. And before I make I ask this question, I remember when I was playing in the city of São Paulo for a lower division team. In our team, Botafogo, right? Our team.
That's right. I'm on board now. I'm all aboard Botafogo.
Yeah. And they were playing in São Paulo that weekend. And it was 2013, and Botafogo had signed Clarence Seedorf. You obviously know Clarence Seedorf, right? Yeah. And Seedorf went to play for Botafogo in 2013. And I was like, come on, I got to watch Seedorf playing for Botafogo, right? So I called a friend of mine that was playing for the team that would play against Botafogo that day, and he got me tickets, and I went to the stadium to watch Sidorf playing for Botafogo, and obviously he was a class player, right? He
Yeah.
was the number 10 for Botafogo as well, just like he was for Madrid or Milan and etc. And
Yeah.
he was a total class guy, right? But other than Sidorf, Botafogo had a guy called Vitinho. Vitinho nowadays, I don't know where he's playing, but he was like 18 years old, and at his he played for CSKA Moscow, and
Okay.
yeah. But back in the day, he was playing for Botafogo, just getting his first few matches for
Mhm.
Botafogo. And man, when I saw him in person that day, I was like, this kid is different,
Okay.
because I knew he was promising for all the media stuff and now, but watching him play in person when you can focus on the player, not because the camera is on him,
Yeah.
but in other situations, and the way he could play with kicking with both legs, he was so powerful for an 18-year old kid, and the way he was so fast, and I was like, man, this kid is different. And watching him in person gave me this perspective, right? My question for you is, watching all these training camps and watching the scrimmage last night, which players would you bring to us like we
Ooh.
saw them and people really don't pay much attention, or even people talk about them but they don't talk enough how different this guy is, or
Mhm.
how his playing style or something about them that sometimes we can't watch on TV but pops out when we see in person? Which guys would you mention in this level?
Oh, this is a really good question. Um, I'll start with it gets talked about, but I think when you see him in person, it's different. I'm going to
Yeah.
start with Dalton Kincaid,
Okay.
just with how smooth he is
Mm.
in everything. Like, because he's such a technically sound player, his footwork, his route running, his understanding
Mhm.
of everything, but he's so smooth. There's no wasted motion or movement in anything he does. His arms, his legs, everything is, if he's going horizontally, if he's stopping and starting and getting upfield, everything is just such a nice, smooth, easy transition for him. And at that size, I think that's uncommon. Like that, even
Mhm.
Dawson Knox, for as athletic as he is, and Knox is a little thicker, there's still some like kind of stiffness and tightness to him.
Mhm. Mhm.
Kincaid is not. He's just fluid in
Mhm.
everything that he does. Khalil Shakir, I think, is another one too. Watching
Mhm.
Shakir run routes, seeing the precision and the athleticism and I think power that he has in his movements are always something you see him move and you're like, oh, like you can just see how he flashes and what he does. I think Von Miller is one, especially
Mhm.
before the injury in Detroit for the Bills a couple years ago. Like
Mhm.
the bend, the dip, the athleticism, like it's just not common to see that kind of stuff. I think Keon Coleman, to everyone's point, kind of strikes a
Mhm.
little bit. And you see that, but I'm gonna go back to another one too, Cole Bishop. Like, and I don't know if it's because of what the rest of the safety group looks like,
Mhm.
but he's just so athletic. Like you
Mhm.
just watch him how quick he is and fluid, and it's just seamless transitions. If he's going deep, if he's going back, how much he's able to just again fluidly change direction and change location and change position.
Mhm.
He's one that I think when you see him in person, you see him lined up top in the post, and then he quickly shifts on the snap and goes into the box. Like you see him, and you're like, oh, like that was kind of quick. That was nice. And then I think honestly, there's a couple in general. I think you just kind of hits. Actually, too, one last one. Actually, you could make a lot of case for this for Bills dudes. But Spencer Brown, I think the
Mhm.
size that he has, but everybody talks about the athleticism. But when you see him in person, you're just like, damn, like that
Yeah.
dude can move. Like even when he walks, like he's not. There's no stiffness. Like he walks like he's 5'10", 185 pounds, and not the giant man that he is. Like he even just when he walks, he looks athletic, let alone
Mhm.
when he's out in space and moving and you see what he does. So yeah, that's a really good one. That's a good question. I like that. And I feel bad because there's so many dudes like, because I'm trying to think of like guys that get talked about versus guys
Yeah.
that don't, and guys that get talked about, but it's still different when you see him in person.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah, man, that's a good question. I like that.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate you taking your time to join me today. Unfortunately, Bills Mafia won't hear some of our soccer talk today because I'm obviously past my time already, and I don't want to take too much of your time as well. But next time, obviously, we'll talk about Barcelona and Bayern because we'll be in season.
I
We'll
was gonna
have
say
more
we're
to
right
talk
around the
about.
corner. Season's about to start.
Yeah,
We're so
yeah, yeah.
close.
We'll
Yeah.
be in season. We'll need to talk about that as well. Anthony, thank you so much, brother, for joining me today. I'm sure the Bills Mafia had a great time here with this talk, and looking forward to the season, to all the content you're gonna create on Cover One. You, Eric, Aaron, Greg, all the guys. Shout out to the guys, and again, the doors are always wide open for you here in the Leading the Charge, brother.
I appreciate you having me. Again, I apologize for being late. This was a great time. I'm always down. Anytime you want me, you got me. I enjoy coming here and talking Bills, and always finding a way to talk soccer at some point as well. So
Yeah,
you're one of my favorite. You're one of
it's
my
a
favorite
blessing.
shows to do because it's just so. I mean, talking to a Brazilian audience and then talking football ball, but then also talking soccer ball. I like you as a person. It's always a really good time. So thank you for having me. I appreciate you. I had a great time.
Yeah, and just to let you know, Botafogo is the top of the table, right? We
That's
are,
right.
yeah, we're top of the table again, so things
I
are
need to
going
get
well.
before my next time that I'm on, I'm gonna get a Botafogo jersey in secret and not tell you. And then when I come on camera, I'll have it. Like I really
Man,
want
it's
to.
gonna be a greatest time ever for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, that's my plan.
Thanks, man. Bills Mafia, thank you so much. Hit that like button, subscribe to Buffalo to Rumblings Network now, right? We are on every podcast platform as well. Subscribe to my own Fernando Schmude YouTube channel, support me there, and I'll be back tomorrow actually in Portuguese also. So if you were there and listened to me and Ant, and you were like, heck, it's in English, come on. Tomorrow I'll talk a lot about of this stuff in Portuguese as well. So join me at 7 p.m. Brazilian time, and we'll have a great time as well. Thanks, Ant. Thanks, Bills Mafia. See you around. And as always, go Bills.